Getting it real with RealChunWai on the hottest topics, frank, engaging and candid. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. How are our ambassadors appointed? Should active politicians deserve to be made ambassadors? Let's hear it from Datuk Farida Noor Ariffin, a UK-trained lawyer, a former judicial and legal service officer of over 25 years, as well as a former Malaysian ambassador to the Netherlands. Please welcome Farida Noor Ariffin. Good evening, Malaysia and followers from around the world. Tonight we have a real special guest, Datuk Noor Farida Muhammad Ariffin, a former diplomat, a former legal and judicial officer of over 25 years. And she will be joining us in this conversation to talk about one of the most hottest topics. Should active politicians, should members of parliament be ambassadors? Or for that matter, should even political appointees be made envoys of our beloved Malaysia? Welcome on board, Datuk. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Chunwai.
Good to see you again. Okay,
Good to see you.
let's start the conversation straight away. Now,
Sure. Yeah.
you have served in the foreign ministry in different capacities for a long time. As a former diplomat yourself, you were a former ambassador of Malaysia to the Netherlands. Can you share with us on the procedures of how a Malaysian ambassador is appointed to a foreign country? What does it take to be an ambassador?
Yes, certainly. Diplomatic relations between countries are governed by the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And we have to abide by the provisions of the Vienna Convention. Well, normally an ambassador is selected by the foreign ministry, by the foreign minister from career diplomats in the foreign ministry. Occasionally, we have had non-diplomats who have been appointed to be heads of mission or ambassadors to foreign countries, like former army generals and so on. That has happened, and also politicians.
Yeah.
But normally it's quite rare, because normally, ambassadors are normally selected from officers of the foreign ministry, from our diplomatic officers, who are career diplomats and who are trained to be ambassadors and to be diplomats, and who are trained to represent their countries abroad.
When you say trained, what kind of the criteria would fit for somebody to be an ambassador? Like he's already made the mark, he has got these factors, he has got these criteria and qualifications. Yeah. What kind of qualification would usually be? Because there'll be quite a number of experienced foreign service officers who aspires to be a diplomat or to be an ambassador, but not all will make it. But so what does it take?
Well, normally you have to serve a certain number of time. You have to be at least a diplomatic officer of at least 10 years or 20 years standing before you are eligible to become an ambassador. That means you've already gathered the necessary experience as a diplomatic officer before you can be elevated to ambassadorial level.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Now, you mentioned just now that there have been many cases where mostly retired politicians get a chance to be a former IGP or former general get to be an ambassador. Yes. I remember that the late Wong Paudi, who was a former chief minister of Penang, and he became the ambassador to the Vatican. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, the former IGP was also an ambassador to France, right?
No, not IGP. I think he was the head of Navy. He was the head of the armed forces.
Oh, I remember. I remember there was a former IGP was the ambassador to France for a while.
I can't remember. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
No, okay. No, I don't remember. I know the former head of armed forces, Tan Sri Aziz, was the ambassador to France a few years ago.
Has there been any? Could you recall? Has there been any time when a serving member of parliament was also an ambassador?
No, it's not possible, because it's a conflict of interest.
Correct.
Because you cannot have a member of the legislature also being part of the executive.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're a ministry official, you're part of the executive, you see. So there is a clear conflict of interest. A serving member of parliament cannot, under the Vienna Convention, cannot be an ambassador as well.
Yeah. Okay, that was why.
Unless they're retired.
That was why we had this recent issue, which was
Yes.
not clear,
Yeah.
because nobody
Yeah.
wanted to talk about it. But the press reported there were two MPs who were said to have been nominated by Malaysia to be ambassadors. One was supposedly to be to
Yes.
to go to Switzerland, and of course it was said to be rejected. But when a country, when a host countries says no to you, because I understand that the word reject does not exist in diplomatic terms, but
Yeah.
how do they convey the message to you that it's a no-go, it's not possible? How do they do it?
No, they can just remain silent. Under the Vienna Convention, Article 4, the receiving country does not need to assign any reasons for not wanting the candidate of the country who proposes a candidate, because you're supposed the sending country must give an agreement regarding the country's candidate to the receiving country. And if the receiving country does not agree to that candidate, the receiving country does not have to assign any reason for rejecting the candidate.
Yeah, you use the word agreement. That's a French word for agreement, is it? Or this?
Yes. Yeah. The agreement, it is specifically related to a diplomatic agreement, to send a diplomat to a country, to an overseas country.
Okay. So Dato, the deafening silence is a message to tell you that look, it's not happening. You're supposed to get it.
That's it. That's right. Yes.
Do they even discreetly inform of officers that look, it's not happening? Do they even do that?
Yeah. Yes, they do it informally. They will informally inform the head of the ministry, either the foreign minister or the KSU, who is the Secretary General of the Foreign Ministry.
When they do that, do they give a reasons, or they do not have to give a reasons?
Well, informally they will inform that they will give the reason, but informally they will not say that officially.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, surely, like in the case of these two serving MPs, okay, would you say that surely our government would have realized that this would happen, that they are serving MPs, and most likely it will be rejected, and that if that is the case, I'm sure they would have also consulted the career diplomats at Wisma Putra. Why would they still want to push these possibilities or these possible nominations if they know that it's going to be a no?
Exactly. That is what is so surprising. They should have consulted the Attorney General, who should know something about international law and the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. So I don't know why they pushed it, only to get a slap in their faces. It's so embarrassing for the country, for your ambassadorial candidates to be rejected. They should have known that it's a clear conflict of interest, that a serving MP cannot be nominated as an ambassador to represent us overseas, because there is a very clear case of conflict of interest, and they should have consulted the legal experts on this, especially the government, especially the Attorney General. Why was the Attorney General silent in this case? That's what I'm surprised.
Yeah. Because it's quite common knowledge that this cannot happen. What do you think would be the minds of these host countries that Malaysia did such a thing? If there was any, what would in their minds, like, surely you guys would know what you guys are doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they would be very surprised that we don't even know basic facts and basic law, And on top of that, in the case of Switzerland, from what I understand, because this is what I heard informally, because the proposed candidate was a senior officer in Dato Sri Najib's government, BN government at the time, when the 1MDB scandal happened, and he did not disassociate himself from the 1MDB scandal. So according to the Swiss government, he is complicit in the scandal. And because you see, the Swiss government is currently investigating 1MDB, they've launched a criminal investigation into 1MDB, and in fact, they're looking for Jolo to arrest him. So the very fact that this candidate did not disassociate himself from the 1MDB is tantamount to the fact that he is complicit in the scandal. So that is why he was not. That was one of the reasons that he was rejected.
I see. That you mean is sufficient, even though you're not a party to the issue.
No. You are because he was a very senior member of the cabinet at the time. Though he himself was not a party, but he did not disassociate himself when this scandal happened.
I see. Okay.
Unlike, for example, Tan Sri Mahyudin Yassin, he criticized the prime minister at that time, Najib Razak, Dato' Sri Najib Razak, but not this particular person.
In any case, it's very odd for any serving members of parliament to be away hundreds or thousands of miles away from Malaysia when you need to service your own constituency and you want to be an ambassador at the same time. That itself is a serious conflict of interest.
Precisely. Precisely. I don't know what was in their minds, for even suggesting such a candidate to represent us overseas, whether it's Jakarta or Switzerland.
Okay, now, Dato', in your experience, okay, there have been cases where, although there have been non-political appointees, and not even retired politicians, where their names where the names of nominees have been rejected, not just by Malaysia but also by host country. Why does this happen? Why did it happen?
No, because normally, it can happen for various reasons. Because candidate is proposed to the host country, they will check. You see, they will check the background of that person, and if they find that there's something wrong with them that they don't agree with, then they will quietly reject.
I see.
Yeah.
In the case of Malaysia, when there are nominees from other countries, do the like of course when there are awards being given to nominees, they supposedly the ACA and the police are supposed to check, whether you are bankrupt or not. Does the same kind of criteria applies to nominees from host country or from Malaysia even when are they vetted in this way? Yeah.
When we propose a candidate to be an ambassador or even a lower ranking diplomat, they are vetted by the police, of course.
Okay.
I mean, both our side and the other side, it will also vet the candidate.
Yeah. This what I call it, nominations for non-diplomats actually it doesn't just happen in Malaysia but also in other countries. I went through my research and found that the US, for example, appoints party leaders and even donors to such positions. Under the Obama administration, he was heavily criticized for sending top political patrons to many countries. It has been reported that 39 of Obama's second-term ambassador nominees gave him campaign money or unknown political allies. It's the same with even President Joe Biden. Besides the US, does it happen in other countries, for example, in the Commonwealth?
Yeah, it does happen because when I was in The Hague, there were other people, there were the ambassadors from other countries who were non-political, were non-career diplomats. But in the case of the United States, it happened not just with Obama, with other presidents as well, including Bill Clinton. Because my American colleagues in The Hague, for example, they were non-career diplomats. They were all, associated with the president. Either they were donors or they were good friends of the president in power at that time. Like, for example, there were 3 American ambassadors during my time in The Hague, and 2 of them were large donors to George Bush, and before that, a good friend of Bill Clinton, who was a professor in Georgetown University. But in the case of US, it does not matter very much because they have huge embassies. The embassies they have big staff, unlike us. We only have 2 or 3 diplomats in each embassy. And they have to do, if the ambassador is a non-career diplomat, then they have to do all the work of the ambassador, for example, writing reports and so on. Whereas for US embassies, it does not matter. As I said, because they've got huge staff who's able to do the work. So the non-career diplomat ambassador will do all the networking work, for example. But the actual nitty-gritty work of doing reports and so on will be done by the junior or by the embassy officials.
So in other words, the real diplomats ended up doing the work of this ambassador.
Yes.
Okay. So there may be some who will say that these political nominees because they are so close to the head of the country,
Yeah.
they would be able to be more effective because they'll be speaking on behalf of the president or the prime minister, because they are really buddies, they can pick up the phone, while the career diplomats may not have the ability to do so. Would you agree with such assessment?
Yes and no. Well, it could be. Well, there may be advantages in such cases, but not necessarily so, because the career diplomat, is trained to do his work, his or her work anyway. And they would get close to the foreign. They would try to get close to the administration of the receiving state of the host country.
These non-career diplomats, okay, these political appointees. So after they have been appointed by the government, because they have not gone through the proper training of being a diplomat, so how are they prepared by Wisma Putra? It's back to square one. The career diplomat don't have a chance to become the ambassador of that country, and they end up having to train this particular person. So what do they have to go through?
Well, it's very disheartening for the career diplomats when who are hoping for promotion, and the promotion is the promotion is, they don't get the promotion because non-career diplomats are appointed as ambassadors. It's very disheartening for the career diplomats in the ministry. So they would have to not train, but they would have to guide the non-career diplomat ambassador. So it's extra hard work, it's extra work for them.
And of course, because they are career diplomats and you have a political appointees, there's this need to tell them and to advise them diplomatically, so to speak, and to tell them in a very very good manner, to tell them, this is not what you should do, blah blah blah. In my experience as a media, I've come across all Malaysian ambassadors who are political appointees. I mean their character and their manner hardly suits the behavior of a diplomat. And when they were appointed, I'm always very amused that they have never been diplomats. So how can they carry themselves well for the Malaysia, or even to conduct themselves in a manner and meetings in a correct way? So I'm like,
exactly. That is a disadvantage of having non-career diplomats, to represent your country abroad. That is truly a clear disadvantage.
But there have been one case, out of respect, I would not mention his name. Okay? But he was quite a dealer. I would say, I used the word the dealer, who could put deals together. And he was appointed to a very important country. And some of us felt that he performed quite well. But I really do not know. I know that in the Malaysian diplomatic, our Wisma Putra, many of our missions are having financial problems. I know that many of our ambassadors tells me they have this budget constraint. It is so terrible that they cannot even afford to have Hari Raya festivals, and they have to pay money out of their own pockets for their drivers. I do not know. Do you think that we have too many missions abroad for Malaysia? Let's say like Singapore, they're very particular, very selective of where they should be based. Are we having too many missions, in your opinion?
No, I don't think so, because it has to be reciprocal. Because in fact, some countries, like for example, Norway, they've got a mission here, but we don't have a mission in Norway, in Oslo.
Okay,
So it has to be reciprocal. When countries have missions here, which are based in KL, we should also reciprocate. But in Singapore, they have some of the ambassadors are located in Singapore itself, and they fly in and out to the countries where they have been assigned to. So I suppose it's cheaper for them in that sense.
I want to come back to the question of budgeting, because I know it's a serious problem. What kind of problems are your friends and former colleagues having in Wisma Putra in terms of finance?
The allocation definitely is not enough. But that is the whole problem, when it comes to budget allocation. Even the health ministry, even hospitals are complaining they don't have enough. And yet the government can give 1.5 billion to an institution, to an agency like JAKIM, for example. I mean, that is something that most people cannot understand, They haven't got the priorities right, Frank, if you ask my frank opinion.
I hear the stories from ambassadors.
Yeah,
Share with me.
yeah,
I know that they will not speak publicly because that's not allowed. But when I hear the
yeah.
sad stories, is that coming out from their own pocket to pay overtime for
Yes,
their drivers. I think it's terrible, and having to
that's right.
cut down a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot operate effectively if you have gone down to that level.
In fact, when I was ambassador in The Hague, I
Mm.
used to drive myself weekends because I didn't have the money to pay overtime for my driver.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
coming back to this question of training of diplomats, over the
yeah,
years, how has it been? Because that in terms of the quality of our education, this is not the fault of our officers, okay? This in terms
yeah,
of the general quality of education, where we know that
yeah,
whether you like it or not, English is a very important language.
yeah,
It's an
yeah,
international language. It could be German, it could be Spanish, it could be French, and now
yeah,
even China. You need to speak Chinese.
yeah,
Like in my case, I totally can't speak Chinese, so
yeah,
I find myself at a great disadvantage. In
yeah.
terms of language, how do we prepare our young diplomats for such roles, knowing that language is now a concern?
Yeah. But for diplomats, we have a special institute called the IDFR to train
Okay.
young. They're trained for 6 months before they are assigned to their various duties, for example. And English is a very important component. But of course, because BM has replaced English, and this has affected not just the Wisma Putra but all other ministries, where their competence in English is quite abysmal, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it puts us at a great disadvantage, and we have to have negotiations, both multilateral negotiations at UN level, for example, or bilateral negotiations, where we cannot put our ideas or our recommendation or ideas across, because of our inability of our officers' inability to speak English well. And that is what some of these people in government do not realize. When they complain that Bahasa Malaysia is that is our sovereign language and so on. But we have to be practical. Even as Tun Mahathir said, English is an international language, and it's also a UN language, and we have to be proficient in English if we are ever going to make an impact overseas.
In the past, in many conferences, Malaysia have always been given that recognition and
Yes.
the privilege to draft the communique. Do they still ask Malaysia to draft this communique in meetings?
Well, because because when we have meetings, a communique is drafted by the representatives of the countries,
The host country,
not just by one country. Yeah.
I see. Okay, right, all right.
Yeah. But if you recall, our senior diplomat Tan Sri Razali Ismail was elected president of the General Assembly. I can't remember in which year.
Yes, I remember.
But that was a record to Malaysia, because of our diplomats were really, really excellent at their jobs.
Yes, excellent.
And this was
no question.
Yeah.
They were larger than life figures in
that's
not just in ASEAN but around the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the during Dr. Mahathir's time, some of us we regard it as the golden years of the Malaysian diplomacy, because we held many positions. We were active in many groupings: Commonwealth, G15, ASEAN, and North South. That vacuum seems to have been lost. Okay, we no longer play an active part in the foreign affairs, possibly because in terms of local affairs we cannot even handle it, right? So how would we play a larger role if we do not even seem to have a proper prime minister in place? No one is sure whether the prime minister will be here tomorrow or the next day. So we have that issue. Given the weakness that we are in, we are no longer a serious player. We are not given that recognition anymore.
That's right.
As a former diplomat, how do you feel that Malaysia is not important anymore in the foreign affairs?
Of course, we're all we're gutted, but we feel gutted by this. It's such a pity, given our past record. If you recall, we were elected to the Security Council twice. Our ambassador in New York, our permanent representative in New York, which is a term for ambassador at the UN, said that the Security Council twice were appointed to the Security Council. I mean, that was a golden years of Malaysian diplomacy. But unfortunately, we've lost it. now it's countries like Indonesia and all that which is making greater impact than we are at ASEAN level or international level.
Why do you think this has happened? Why have we slide down the ladder?
No, because of our lack of competence in English, and also I don't know, because I don't know whether the government knows what it is doing. And it also depends on the foreign minister, how clued in the foreign minister is, as well as our cabinet.
Do you
But
feel
the very
that
fact that they can even nominate 2 MPs, you know, to represent us in 2 other countries abroad is really quite shocking. It just shows really the lack of knowledge of diplomatic relations and the treaty concern. It really is quite shocking to me.
Also, do you think that the leadership lacks that interest or that passion to be involved in regional and foreign issues because it does not translate into votes for them?
It could be one of the reasons, yeah.
Now, you mentioned Indonesia. I've noticed that in terms of Jokowi has managed to stir himself to this position. It's all planned, of course. It's all you have to work towards it. Indonesia has done very well. They have put their house in order. They have eradicated the corruption in a much better way than Malaysia. Jokowi has positioned himself in G20, and I think that they're taking the ASEAN chair in 2 years' time, if I'm not mistaken. He has filled up the vacuum left by Dr. Mahathir. That he's now the big man for developing countries and for Asia. He's amazing.
Yeah, that's right. One really has to admire Indonesia, and he's serious about tackling corruption, unlike us, you know. I mean, in our case, it's not just it is our politicians themselves and government and allegedly government figures themselves, government leaders themselves who are allegedly corrupt. So what do you expect? You know, we are the laughing stock of the world, unfortunately. Some newspaper media in foreign countries have labeled us as the most corrupt country in the world because of 1MDB. And even the former Attorney General of the United States even labeled 1MDB as the highest of the century. So how can we make an impact, a good impact, in a positive impact overseas when we are the laughing stock of the world?
It must
be. But remember during Tun Mahathir's time, we even hosted the Commonwealth meeting, the head called the CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, in 1989, if I remember. Because at that time I was working in the Commonwealth Secretariat and had to come back for that meeting for CHOGM.
Yes, I remember that.
And in fact, they even offered Musa Hitam to be the Commonwealth Secretary General, you know, but he declined.
I want to bring forward this issue that, you know, the world has changed. The world order has moved tremendously. Even issues like the non-aligned movement may not be relevant anymore. And some of the formula terms that we use, Zofan, may not even be effective or even relevant anymore. But I've noticed, as someone who has covered the foreign service for a while, I've noticed that some of the terms are still old narrative and perhaps even outdated. We have not spent enough time thinking about, the changes in the world where the China has become very big. US is trying to balance it and trying to spread the influence. But a lot of changes is happening. But we seems to be pretty silent. We have not been trend centers, unlike previously, where we were trend centers in terms of setting the tone and the narrative to show that, look, we are playing a big role. We may be small, but we are strategic, so we can play a big role. But that's gone. Why is there in the perception? It's perception, I could be wrong. Why is this perception that there are no thinking, no new ideas that's coming up?
It's such a pity. I mean, you know, I don't know what the foreign ministry is doing in that respect. You know, everyone noticed that we didn't even send any officials for the opening of the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing, which is such a slap in the face to China, which is supposed to be a country which we have always been friendly with. Because China has always regarded Malaysia as its best friend in ASEAN. So I don't know what got into our government, you know. What was the thing of our government of not even honoring China by sending our government representatives for the opening ceremony of the Winter Games in Beijing? There was a missed opportunity for us.
Yes. Especially when the Winter Olympic Village is actually constructed by a Malaysian firm, the Ginting Group.
we have 3 representatives, you know, who are participating in the Winter Olympics.
I want to come back to this issue of the workings of Wiswamitra. Obviously, the information gathering is very important. Information gathering is another word for intelligence gathering. We all know that. In missions all around the world, they have many. They have such officers, whether they're third secretary or second secretary, who actually spends a lot of time with the media, spend a lot of times with politicians to gather information. Given the budget that we have, okay, budget constraints, and even language constraint, and even social ability, okay, okay. How are we doing at that level, information gathering?
Well, they have to do the best that they can, but every diplomat, wherever he or she is based, will have to make friends, you know, with not just with the media, not just with the foreign ministry, but also all the players outside as well. Corporate, for us, the most important thing is trade.
Yes.
So we have to be. So we always have Medtrade. You know, we always have representatives of Medtrade or MITI present in our missions. We always have a representative as part of our. They have all our diplomatic status, and they're part of the mission staff. And they will also, you know, be networking with the corporate figures in the host country and so on. To try and promote trade, you know, trade between us and the host country.
I thought I want to see your views as a former diplomat and who still have got the relationship with many of your friends there. Now, the US and UK ambassador wrote a letter expressing their concern on Malaysia's forced labor and human trafficking issues. Now, as somebody who do not understand this quite well, okay, many of us, even in media, have been asking, and I know China asked this question too, but what to the US and the Western countries, because when they talk about forced labor and human trafficking, what do they mean by that? Because these two criteria appears to be a stumbling block for Western investors to come and put money in Malaysia. They said, look, if you do not sort this out, we won't put money in your country. What do they mean by forced labor, to your understanding?
No, because there's a lot of exploitation of migrant labor in Malaysia. And in fact, during the time of PH government, they formed an independent committee to look into this issue. And the deputy chairman was G25 member. That was the chairman, that was Sri Hishamuddin Yunus, was formerly, you know, with the Court of Appeal. And I was the deputy chairman. In fact, when we had interviews with migrant laborers themselves, migrant workers themselves, with diplomats, with employers association and so on. And we have, you know, we produced the report and the recommendation and all the recommendations. And one of the recommendations was for the report to be made public. Until that was 2 years ago. Until now, the report has still not been made public.
I see. So work has actually been done on these issues?
Nothing much, I'm afraid, because there's still a lot of exploitation of migrant labor in this country.
So what do they mean when they say human trafficking?
Well, they bring in, because they're bringing in, you know, say Rohingyas and so on, refugees here to look for jobs. That's what's meant by human trafficking.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And because of these two problems, we know that the chances of Malaysian having a visa-free entry into US will be almost impossible, because it's been dragging for almost a decade actually.
It is something that we need to urgently address. No, I totally agree. We've seen the letters from both the ambassadors, the UK ambassador as well as the UK High Commissioner as well as the American ambassador here.
For them to actually jointly draft this letter shows the seriousness of this whole issue.
Yeah, precisely, and it's something we need to urgently address. No, because you know this when they bring in all these refugees to try and look for work here, they are totally exploited. They are at the mercy of the employers, because they have no work permit, they have no legal rights. You see. And on top of that, there's also the matter of corruption and bribery, because it's common knowledge that many officers from the immigration department as well as the police, you know, look ask for bribe. They wait for these workers outside the factory every month, and then when they come out, they ask them for bribes, 50 or 100 ringgit each from these poor workers. And in fact, I was told that even workers, migrant workers, foreign workers with valid work permits are also subjected, they are being asked for bribes. And because they do not know their rights, they pay up. No, it's really disgraceful. It's something that needs to be addressed. But there seems to be no political will to do it, to curb this corruption on the part of our staff of our government agencies.
This is going to be a lost opportunity because that the countries are opening up, borders are reopening. So this is the time when investors will have to make a final decision to be in these countries physically. They'll make a decision, to decide whether they really want to put money in this particular country. And every country in this region is competing for that country. If we do not get our act right, so the FDIs will just go away. And Indonesia seems to be more an attractive place because the market is big and the labor hour is there, you know.
Yeah, even Vietnam apparently they're attracting a lot of FDI.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you look at the ranking of the I think they call it the World Port Index, it's quite frightening because we have Vietnam, Thailand ahead of us. We have Indonesia just behind our back. And if we do not wake up, and it's really unfortunate that some of Malaysians still think of Indonesia as a country we supply maids and workers. But it's really frightening. It's a big giant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, with a population of more than 200 million, you know, they are a force to be reckoned with.
And their cabinet lineup is really impressive. Really impressive.
On top of that, we've got the biggest cabinet in the world for such a small country. I think Indonesia's got, and on top of that, the cabinet members are all highly qualified, you know, and competent. Yeah. Even the finance minister used to be a high-ranking official from the World Bank.
You know that we all in this pretty pessimistic situation. Now, final word coming from you, looking at this whole situation, what would you like to see for Malaysia, then to put ourselves on the world map again, that people will take our diplomats seriously and given the kind of respect and recognition because we are doing right. It's very hard for career diplomats to continue carrying the torch, carrying the flag, having to defend Malaysia when there's something they can do when it's burning, the house is burning politically at home. What is your view on that? What's the final word?
No, the final word is the government has got to get its act together. Only if people internationally, locally, internationally respect the government for its competence, for its commitment to eradicate corruption and so on, and if they see our government as being a clean government, only then can we promote ourselves abroad. Only then will our diplomats will have an easier time promoting Malaysia abroad. Oh, and one more thing, ChunWai.
Yeah.
Did you read that US firms have invested 165.73 billion in Malaysia amid the pandemic, which is a good thing, which is a very encouraging thing, though.
Yeah.
And I heard many Chinese companies from PRC are also looking to invest here.
Yeah. We need all this FDI.
At the end of the tunnel, all is not lost yet. We are not yet a failed state.
Correct. Yes. We're not a failed state, but we must stop the decline. Yeah. Thank you, Dato', for taking time and sharing with us your views, because we are doing this simply because we love Malaysia too much.
Exactly. We're all patriots. Yeah. We're doing it for the love of our country.
Malaysia needs this such discourse in a civil and respectful manner. Please continue to join myself and Dr. Noor Farida in our work. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure, ChunWai. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.